I discovered my wife was cheating on me through a photo that she herself posted on Instagram, and what I did after that destroyed not just our marriage, but her entire life. Guys, you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. This story started 3 weeks ago when I was at work having coffee and decided to check my wife's Instagram. Normal thing, right? Married for 12 years. We'd always been transparent with each other. Then I see a photo on her stories. At a birthday party she said was girls only. But in the reflection of the mirror behind her, you could clearly see a guy hugging her from behind. A guy I had never seen in my life. My world collapsed at that exact moment. My hand started shaking so much I spilled coffee on the desk. My colleagues asked if I was okay, but I couldn't even speak. But here's where the story gets interesting. Instead of confronting her right away, I decided to do something that would change everything. I created a plan so elaborate, so calculated that when you hear it, you'll be jaw-dropped. For the next 45 days, I transformed into the greatest detective you've ever seen. I installed apps, hired a private investigator, and discovered a web of lies so big I couldn't believe my own wife was capable of it. What I discovered wasn't just cheating. It was a conspiracy involving our bank account, our apartment, and even my own family. And when I finally executed my revenge, man, it was epic. She lost everything in a single night. Grab some popcorn because this story is going to be long, and I guarantee you'll want to hear it until the end. Well, before I tell you how I destroyed my ex-wife's life, you need to understand who I was in this story and how it all began. My name is, let's call me Carlos. I'm 34 years old, a civil engineer, working at a construction company here in Sao Paulo. I was always the straight-laced guy, you know? That type of man who pays bills on time, takes his wife to dinner on weekends, and dreams of having a perfect family. My ex-wife, who I'll call Fernanda, is 31 years old. We met in college in 2010, when I was in my 4th year of engineering, and she was in her 2nd year of business administration. It was love at first sight, at least on my part. She was that beautiful, popular girl that all the guys wanted to date. And by some miracle, she chose to be with me. We dated for 3 years before getting married. Those were the best years of my life, man. We had plans for everything. Where to live, how many kids to have, what kind of house to build. I literally drew the blueprint of our dream house and showed it to her. Fernanda got emotional, said I was the most romantic man in the world. We got married in December 2013 in a beautiful ceremony in the countryside of Sao Paulo in her hometown. I spent all my savings on that wedding, but it was worth every penny. Fernanda was radiant. I felt like the luckiest man on the planet. The first years were perfect. We bought a 2-bedroom apartment in the South Zone, financed for 30 years, with me taking on most of the payments, obviously. Fernanda got a job at a digital marketing company, and I was growing at the construction company. Everything was going smoothly. In 2016, we decided to try having children. Fernanda stopped taking birth control. We started doing those fertile period calculations, but it didn't work. We tried for 2 years. We did tests, discovered the problem was with me. Low sperm motility. Man, that destroyed me. I always dreamed of being a father, and discovering I might never be able to was a huge blow. Fernanda was super understanding at the time, said she loved me regardless of children that we could adopt in the future. That made me love her even more. In 2018, we started the IVF process. 3 attempts, all failed. Each attempt cost about 15,000 reais, money I took from my savings and even borrowed. Fernanda was devastated with each failed attempt, and I felt guilty for not being able to give her what she wanted most. It was during this time that I started noticing some changes in her. Fernanda had always been sociable, but she started going out much more with friends. Every weekend there was some event, birthday party, happy hour, company party. I even joked that she had more social life than an influencer, but I never suspected anything, you know. Fernanda had always been transparent with me. She posted everything on Instagram, sent photos of places she was at, came home telling all the details of the night. I trusted her 100%. In 2019, she changed jobs, left the marketing company, and went to work at a well-regarded advertising agency here in Sao Paulo. The salary was better, the environment was cooler, and she was super excited. She started dressing differently, more modern, more sexy, I'd say. Bought new clothes, changed her haircut, started going to the gym. I thought it was great. My wife was taking care of herself, feeling good about herself, especially after all the stress from trying to get pregnant. I thought it was a renewal phase, you know, a way for her to rebuild herself after everything we went through. Her new company had a very different culture. Young crowd, always having get-togethers, work trips, networking events. Fernanda started traveling more, staying later at the office, participating in more social events. And me, I was focused on work, trying to grow in the company to get a promotion. I wanted to earn more money so we could try other alternatives to have children, maybe do treatment abroad. So I kind of encouraged her to enjoy the social phase, while I chased our financial goals. Fernanda started talking a lot about her coworkers. There was the creative department crew, who were super funny. There were the girls from client services, who became her friends. And there were the directors, who were young and successful. She always came home with office stories. Who said what, who did what, which project was happening. I liked listening, felt like I was participating in her professional life. It never crossed my mind that some of these stories might be omitting important details. At the end of 2021, Fernanda suggested we stop trying to have children for a while. Said she was emotionally exhausted, that she needed a break. I agreed, thought it made sense. Maybe without the pressure, things would flow naturally. And that's how we got to 2022, the year that changed everything. 2022 started differently. Fernanda had an energy I hadn't seen in years. More animated, more affectionate, more present, you know? I thought the decision to take a break from trying to get pregnant had been good for her. It seemed like my wife had gone back to being that girl I met in college. She started taking better care of the house, making special dinners, planning weekend activities for us. Even our intimate life improved a lot. After years focused only on fertile periods and treatments, we finally went back to being intimate for pleasure, without pressure. I was over the moon. At the agency where she worked, things were also going very well. Fernanda had been promoted to account coordinator, was earning more, and always came home talking about the incredible projects she was working on. Her team was very close, always doing activities together. There was Camila, who became her best friend, Julia, who was an intern and Fernanda was mentoring, the creative team, Bruno, who was art director, and Rafael, who was a copywriter. And there were the directors, Mariana, who was client services director, and, well, let's call him Diego. Diego was planning director, 29 years old, graduated from a federal university, postgraduate abroad. Fernanda always talked about him with admiration. Diego is a genius. Diego had a brilliant idea today. Diego managed to close that impossible account. At first, I thought it was cool she had such a professional reference. But everything started changing when I began noticing some strange details. First, Fernanda started mentioning Diego with excessive frequency. Like every day there was a story involving him. And they were always stories where he appeared as the hero, the smart guy, the natural leader. It started bothering me, but I tried to ignore it. Second, she started dressing differently for work days. She'd always been vain, but now she was putting much more effort. Tighter clothes, more elaborate makeup, stronger perfumes. When I commented that she looked beautiful, she'd say it was because she had an important meeting or client event. Third, the phone. Man, her phone became an extension of her body. Fernanda had always been connected, but now she was obsessive. She'd wake up and immediately grab the phone. During dinner, she'd be checking messages. Before sleeping, one more check. And always with that little smile when reading something. But what caught my attention most were the outings. Fernanda had always liked going out with friends, but the frequency increased a lot, and they were always work-related events. Agency happy hour, someone's birthday, campaign launch party, client get-together. I'd never been controlling, always trusted her. But I started finding it strange that every week there was some event. And she always came back super animated, telling 1,000 stories, talking about how united the team was, how incredible her work environment was. In March 2022, Fernanda told me the agency was going on a work trip to Gramado. It was to present a campaign to a big tourism client. She was super excited, said it would be an incredible opportunity for her professional growth. The trip lasted 4 days. Fernanda sent photos every day of the hotel, restaurants, meetings, the team, always in groups, always professional. When she came back, she brought me gifts and kept talking about how the presentation was a success, how the client loved the team's work. But there was one thing that stuck with me. In one of the photos she sent, you could see Diego in the background, kind of blurred, and he was looking at her in a different way. It wasn't a professional look. It was the look of someone admiring a woman, you know? At the time, I tried to ignore that feeling. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was seeing things that weren't there. Fernanda was happy, our relationship was good. Why would I create problems where they didn't exist? In April, the trips became more frequent. Meeting in Campinas, presentation in Rio, workshop in Belo Horizonte. Always with the team, always necessary for work. Fernanda sent photos, called every day, maintained the usual transparency. But I started noticing she was different when she came back from these trips. More affectionate, more attentive, as if she was compensating for something. And she always brought expensive gifts for me. Watch, perfume, designer shirt. When I asked why so much pampering, she'd say she was earning well and wanted to please me. It was in May that something happened that should have alerted me, but I was too naive to understand at the time. Fernanda came home from one of these trips and was strange, kind of nervous, kind of euphoric. She said an embarrassing situation had happened at the hotel. She had forgotten her room key and had to ask for help at reception. But the way she told the story seemed rehearsed, you know? And it was around this time that she started talking about renovating the apartment. She wanted to change furniture, paint walls, modernize everything. Said she was inspired by the environments she saw on work trips. But everything started changing when I noticed she was receiving many more WhatsApp messages. It was in June 2022 that things started getting really strange. Fernanda was receiving WhatsApp messages all the time. And they weren't normal messages, you know? Her phone was constantly vibrating, and she always rushed to check. What bothered me most was her reaction when she read the messages. That little smile, man, it was a smile I hadn't seen in years. A smile from someone receiving something that made her genuinely happy. And when I asked, who is it? She always gave the same answer. Oh, it's the work team in the group. But work groups don't make anyone smile like that, right? One night, we were watching Netflix in the living room when her phone rang. It was almost 11 p.m. Fernanda looked at the screen and said, "It's Diego. Must be something urgent about the project." She answered and left the room to talk. Guys, she was on the phone for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. On a work call at 11 p.m. When she came back, I asked if everything was okay, and she said it was about an important presentation the next day, that Diego was nervous and needed to talk about the details. Man, what boss calls an employee at 11 p.m. to talk about nervousness? That left me with a huge red flag. The next day, I decided to do a test. I sent Fernanda a message in the middle of the afternoon. "Love, what time are you coming home today?" She replied immediately. Then, about 20 minutes later, I sent another. Forgot to ask, how did the presentation Diego was nervous about go? She took 3 hours to respond. And when she did, it was just, everything went well. This made me very uncomfortable. Why did a question about work take so long to be answered when she had replied immediately about the schedule? That's when I started paying more attention to details. And man, when you start paying attention, you see things that were right in front of you all along. Fernanda had changed her perfume. She was using one I'd never seen. When I asked, she said she got it as a free sample at a store. But it was an expensive perfume. I recognized the brand. She was also taking much better care of her body. Gym every day, beauty treatments, new lingerie. When I complimented her, she'd say she was feeling more self-confident after the promotion at work. But what caught my attention most was a change in her behavior with me. Fernanda became, how can I explain, more affectionate, but in a forced way. Like she was playing the role of the perfect wife. She started making elaborate dinners for no special reason, buying expensive wines, suggesting romantic activities. And our intimate life, which was already good, became too intense. Like she was always wanting it, always taking initiative. At the time, I thought it was a good thing. My wife was taking care of herself, being affectionate. Our relationship was great. But now I understand it was guilt. She was compensating. In July, the first incident happened that really made me suspicious. It was a Saturday, and Fernanda said she was going to lunch with the girls from work. Normal thing, she always did that. But this time, she really went all out with her look. New dress, impeccable makeup, high heels, for lunch with friends. She left at noon and said she'd be back around 4 p.m. At 6 p.m., she still hadn't arrived. I sent a message. She replied that they were at a bar after lunch, that she'd be home soon. She got home at 9:30 p.m. Guys, almost 10 hours away from home for a lunch with the girls. And she arrived kind of strange, talking too loud, laughing too much, like she was nervous. When I asked how lunch was, she started telling a super detailed story about where they went, what they ate, who said what. But there was something about the way she told it. It seemed like she was reciting a script. And then she said something that made me suspicious. Oh, and Diego showed up at the end, by coincidence. He was at the same mall and came to say hi to us. Man, what a strange coincidence, right? Her boss happening to be at the same place as her on a Saturday afternoon. It was that night that I started being sure something was wrong. Fernanda took a shower as soon as she got home, something she never did after going out with friends. And she spent a long time in the bathroom. When she came out, she had a guilty expression. In bed, she was on her phone until late. I pretended I was sleeping and kept watching. She was typing messages, deleting them, typing again, and always with that little smile. On Sunday morning, I woke up before her and decided to make a special breakfast. And when I went to call her, I saw she was sleeping with her phone under the pillow. Fernanda never did that. She always left the phone on the nightstand. During breakfast, I tried to bring up her work. I asked how Diego was, if he was a good boss, those things. Fernanda got kind of uncomfortable and quickly changed the subject. That's when I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. Investigate my own wife. I started paying attention to her social media. Fernanda always posted everything on Instagram. Food, places, moments with friends. But I noticed she had stopped posting some things, especially work events. Before, she posted photos of every get-together, every happy hour, every trip. Now she went to events, but didn't post anymore. Or she only posted very specific photos, always in groups, always proper. I decided to check Diego's Instagram. Fernanda had shown me his profile once, talking about how professional he was and such. The profile was public, and I started stalking. And man, that's when I saw it. Diego posted stories of places I knew Fernanda had been, on the same day, at the same time. The restaurant where she said she had lunch with the girls? Diego had posted a photo of food from there on the same day. The bar where she said she went after? Diego had posted a story of a drink from there, but what really made me paranoid was a photo he posted on a Friday night. It was a photo of expensive wine at a fancy restaurant table, and I recognized the place. It was the restaurant where Fernanda and I had gone on our wedding anniversary. That same Friday, Fernanda had said she was staying late at the office, closing a project. She got home almost midnight, saying she had ordered Japanese food for the team. But Diego was at an expensive restaurant, drinking wine, the same night my wife said she was working late. That's when I was sure Fernanda was cheating on me. But instead of confronting her right away, I decided to do something different. I was going to gather evidence. I was going to find out exactly what was happening. And then I was going to decide what to do with that information. Because one thing I was sure of, if my wife was cheating on me, she wasn't going to get away with it. From that moment on, I transformed into the greatest detective you've ever seen. August 2022 was the month that changed everything. I'd spent all of July gathering evidence, and man, what I discovered was much worse than I imagined. First, I installed a data recovery app on the laptop we shared at home. Fernanda sometimes used it for work, and I discovered I could recover WhatsApp web conversations she had used. Guys, when I saw those conversations, my world collapsed. They weren't just casual work messages. They were intimate, romantic conversations, full of details about meetings they had been having. And the worst part? They had been meeting for months. There was a message from Diego saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight. You look beautiful in that blue dress." It was exactly the dress she had worn to that lunch with the girls. There was a message from Fernanda. "Yesterday was incredible. I'm still thinking about you," sent on a Sunday morning after one of her mysterious outings. But what destroyed me most was a conversation where they talked about me. Diego asked, "Doesn't he suspect anything?" And Fernanda replied, "No, Carlos is very naive. He trusts me completely." Man, reading that was like getting punched in the stomach. My own wife calling me naive, laughing at me with her lover. But I didn't stop there. I hired a private investigator. Yes, I know it sounds like something from a movie, but this service really exists. It cost a lot of money, but I needed concrete evidence. The investigator delivered a complete report 2 weeks later. Photos, times, locations. Fernanda and Diego were meeting at least twice a week, always at different hotels, always during lunchtime or after work. There was a photo of them entering a hotel in Villa Madalena. There was a photo of them leaving a restaurant holding hands. There was even a photo of them kissing in the agency parking lot. But the photo that marked me most was one where they were on a hotel balcony hugging, watching the sunset. Fernanda was wearing a dress I had given her as a gift on our last wedding anniversary. She was wearing my gift to go out with another guy. At this point, I already had enough evidence to confront her. But I wanted more. I wanted to understand exactly how long this had been going on, and I wanted her to give herself away. That's when I came up with a plan. I created a fake Instagram profile. I used a photo of a handsome guy I found on Google, invented a story that I was a businessman, lived in São Paulo, and I started following people from Fernanda's social circle. After a few days, I started liking and commenting on her photos. Nothing too obvious, just some beautiful photo here and there. Fernanda started following me back and liking my photos too. Then I moved to the next phase. I sent her a DM. "Hi Fernanda, sorry to bother you, but I saw you work in advertising. I need an agency for a campaign for my company. Do you have time to talk?" She replied super nicely, said she'd love to help. We arranged to have coffee to talk about the project. Guys, my own wife arranged a meeting with me thinking I was another guy. On the arranged day, I arrived at the cafe before her and sat at a strategic table where I could see the entrance, but she wouldn't see me easily. I wanted to see how she would behave. Fernanda arrived 10 minutes late, all dressed up. Hair done, makeup perfect, professional but sensual outfit. She was clearly dressing to impress the businessman. She waited for 20 minutes, looking at her phone, looking at the cafe entrance. I sent a message from the fake profile saying I had an emergency and needed to reschedule. Fernanda replied, "No problem, it happens. How about tomorrow at the same time?" Man, my wife was willing to meet a guy she met on Instagram. A complete stranger. This showed me she wasn't just cheating on me with Diego, but was open to cheating with anyone. I canceled the next day's meeting too, and then blocked her from the fake profile. But I had already seen enough. That's when I decided I was going to confront her, but not just anyway. I wanted her to confess everything herself. On August 15th, a Monday, I came up with the final plan. I called my boss and said I was sick, that I wasn't going to work. Fernanda left normally for work, not knowing I was home. At 10 a.m., I called the agency where she worked and asked to speak with her. The receptionist said Fernanda had gone to an external meeting and would only be back in the afternoon. At 10:30 a.m., I called her cell phone. Fernanda answered, whispering, "Hi, love, I'm in a super important meeting. Can I call you later?" I said, "Sure, love. I just wanted to know what time you're coming home today." "Oh, it's going to be late, okay? This meeting will extend, and then I have to go back to the office to close some details. I'll be home around 9 p.m., okay?" "All right, love. I love you. I love you too." Man, she lied to my face. Said she was in a meeting when the receptionist had just told me she had left, and she still had the nerve to say she loved me. At 11 a.m., I was parked in front of the hotel that the investigator had photographed them at several times. And guess who arrived at 11:15 a.m.? Fernanda and Diego, each in their own car, parked 5 minutes apart. She entered first, he entered after. Tactic to not be seen together. I stayed there, in my car, watching my wife enter a hotel with another man. After 12 years of marriage, after everything we went through together, after all the attempts to have children, she was there, blatantly cheating on me. At that moment, I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and relief. Relief to finally be sure, to not be imagining things anymore. At 2:30 p.m., they left the hotel. Fernanda left first. Diego left 10 minutes later. She had a satisfied expression, happy, like she had just lived the best moment of her day. I followed her from a distance. Fernanda went straight to a mall, entered a lingerie store, bought some pieces, then went to a salon to blow-dry her hair. At 4 p.m., she went back to the office, probably to create the alibi that she had been working all day. I went home and waited. At 9:15 p.m., Fernanda arrived home. "Hi, love. Sorry I'm late. The day was so hectic that meeting was eternal, and then I had to solve 1,000 things at the office." She gave me a kiss on the cheek and went straight to the shower. She spent almost an hour in the bathroom. When she came out, she was wearing a new nightgown, probably one of the ones she had bought at the mall. "What a beautiful nightgown, love. Is it new?" "Oh, I bought it a while ago. Never wore it." Another lie. During dinner, she kept talking about her hectic workday, about how the meeting client was demanding, about how Diego had helped her solve some problems. I sat there, listening to my wife invent a completely false story about her day, while I knew exactly where she had been and what she had done. That's when I made the final decision. I wasn't just going to confront Fernanda. I wasn't just going to ask for a divorce. I was going to destroy her life the same way she destroyed mine. I was going to make her feel exactly what I was feeling. The pain of betrayal, the humiliation of being deceived, the feeling of having your life turned upside down. And I knew exactly how to do it. That night, while Fernanda slept next to me, probably dreaming about Diego, I stayed awake planning every detail of my revenge. She had chosen to betray me. Now I was going to choose to destroy her. And the best part, she wasn't going to see it coming. After that night of August 15th, I transformed into a completely different person. During the day, I was the same old Carlos, loving husband, dedicated worker, man in love with his wife. But inside, I was planning the most calculated destruction you can imagine. First, I organized all the evidence I had collected. Photos from the private investigator, screenshots of recovered conversations, reports of times and locations, everything cataloged by date, everything with irrefutable proof. I created folders on my personal computer with discrete names: new house project, kitchen renovation, 2023 trip. But inside each folder was the complete documentation of Fernanda's betrayal. Second, I started preparing myself financially. I opened a checking account just for me at another bank and started transferring money little by little. Not all at once, so as not to raise suspicion. I also consulted a divorce lawyer and found out exactly what my rights were and how to protect my assets. Third, and most importantly, I started documenting everything. Every lie Fernanda told, I wrote down. Every time she went out to work and I knew she was with Diego, I recorded. Every expensive gift she gave me, clearly to compensate for guilt, I photographed with the date. But what impressed me most was how Fernanda continued playing the role of perfect wife. Man, she was better to me than ever. More affectionate, more attentive, more present. If I didn't know about the betrayal, I would think our marriage was at its best moment. She cooked special dishes, suggested romantic activities, even bought tickets to a show I wanted to see. And our intimate life, guys, it was incredible. Fernanda was more passionate, more creative, more willing. Obviously, she was practicing with Diego and then applying it with me. The most revolting thing was seeing her lie to my face with such naturalness. "Love, I'm going to be late today. I have a client meeting." Lie. "Diego had to travel to São Paulo. He'll be away for a few days." Lie. "The girls arranged a happy hour. Can I go?" Lie. And there I was, pretending I believed everything, being the understanding husband as always. In September, something happened that almost made me explode before time. Fernanda came home one day and said, "Love, I have a surprise for you." She had bought an expensive gold chain, one of those I always wanted but never bought because I thought it was too expensive. "Why this gift, love?" "Oh, because I love you so much and wanted to please you." "You deserve it." Man, my wife was giving me an expensive gift with money she earned working with the guy who was sleeping with her. The irony was so much I almost laughed in her face. But it was in October that I discovered something that completely changed my plans. Digging deeper into the recovered conversations, I found a thread where Fernanda and Diego were planning something much bigger than I imagined. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. Diego had sent. I already talked to my realtor friend. He found a perfect apartment for us in Vila Madalena. How about we go see it this weekend? And Fernanda replied, "It would be incredible to live together with you, but I need to resolve the situation with Carlos first. I can't just abandon him." "Are you going to ask for a divorce?" "I will, but calmly. I need to organize myself financially first. The apartment is in both our names, and he earns more than me. I need to make sure I'll come out of this with something. And there's more." In the next conversation, Diego asked, "And if he finds out before you organize yourself?" Fernanda replied, "He'll never find out. Carlos is very naive, very trusting. He believes everything I say. I can keep stringing him along for a few more months until I organize myself." Man, when I read that, I felt a rage I had never felt in my life. It wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation, it was premeditation, it was pure cruelty. My wife was using me like a useful idiot while planning her new life with another guy. That's when I decided to accelerate my plans. Fernanda wanted to string me along for a few more months. She wanted to come out of this situation gaining something. Not going to happen. I was going to destroy her plans before she could execute them. I was going to leave her without ground, without time to react, without possibility of organizing herself. And I knew exactly how to do it. The plan I came up with was so cruel, so calculated, that to this day I'm impressed with my own capacity for revenge. Fernanda wanted to play manipulation. She was going to discover who was the real master of this game. And the best part, she was going to find out in the worst possible way. Guys, before I tell you the explosive ending of this story, I need to stop for a moment to reflect on everything that happened. Because what I did after, well, it changed not just Fernanda's life, but mine too. When you discover a betrayal, the first reaction is always emotional. Anger, sadness, revolt, wanting to break everything. I felt all of that. But what made me different was that I managed to channel these emotions into something more strategic. During these months investigating my own wife, I learned things about myself that I didn't even know existed. I discovered I had a capacity for planning and patience I never imagined I had. I discovered I could pretend, lie, manipulate when necessary. This scared me a little, to be honest, because I always saw myself as a good, honest, straightforward person. But Fernanda's betrayal awakened a side of me I didn't know, a calculating, cold, vengeful side. And you know what impressed me most? How easy it was to deceive her back. Fernanda thought I was too naive to discover the betrayal. She completely underestimated my intelligence. She thought I was that silly husband who believes any lame excuse. But the truth is, I always knew something was strange. My instinct had been screaming for months. I just chose to trust her instead of trusting my instinct. And that was my biggest lesson. Always trust your instinct. When someone you love starts acting differently, when stories don't add up, when you feel something is wrong, it probably is. Don't ignore these signs. Don't be like I was for months, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Another thing I learned, people are capable of unimaginable things when they think they won't be discovered. The Fernanda I knew, or thought I knew, would never be capable of betraying me. She was affectionate, honest, loyal. At least that's what I thought. But when she thought she had found something better, when she thought she could deceive me without consequences, she transformed into a completely different person. She lied to me every day for months, looked into my eyes and invented elaborate stories about where she was, what she was doing, who she was with, and she did this with frightening naturalness. This made me question everything. How many other times had she lied to me throughout our 12 years of marriage? How many other things didn't I know about the person I shared a bed with every night? But the most important lesson I learned was about self-esteem and self-respect. For years, I blamed myself for our problems getting pregnant. I thought it was my fault, that I wasn't man enough, that I was failing as a husband. Fernanda always consoled me, said she loved me regardless of children, that we were a team, but now I understand she was already looking for a way out. The fertility problems were just a convenient excuse. If it wasn't that, it would be something else. Because when a person decides to cheat, they always find a justification. And I spent months martyring myself, thinking that if I were a better husband, if I earned more money, if I were more romantic, maybe our relationship would improve. But the truth is, there was nothing I could do. The problem wasn't with me. It was with her. Fernanda chose to cheat, chose to lie, chose to disrespect me. And these choices say everything about her character, not about my value as a man or as a husband. This was liberating for me. Understanding that I had no guilt, that I did everything I could to be a good husband, that the problem was with her, not with me. And that's what gave me strength to do what I did after. Because when you understand you were disrespected, betrayed, manipulated, when you understand that the person who should protect you was exactly the one who hurt you most, then you stop feeling sorry and start feeling angry. And anger, when well channeled, can be a very powerful tool. Fernanda wanted to play with me, wanted to use me as a useful idiot while planning her new life. All right. But she was going to discover she chose the wrong guy to deceive. And what I did to her, man, it was epic. And now we get to the end of this story, guys. The moment you've been waiting for since the beginning, how I destroyed Fernanda's life. On November 20th, 2022, exactly 3 months after I saw her entering the hotel with Diego, I executed my final plan. It was a Sunday. Fernanda had left in the morning for a supposed run in the park with the girls. Of course it was a lie. She had gone to meet Diego. I knew because I had seen their messages arranging it. While she was out, I organized everything. I printed all the photos the investigator had taken, all the conversations I had recovered, all the hotel payment receipts I had found on her credit card. I organized everything chronologically, like a police dossier. Then I created a WhatsApp group. I added Fernanda's mother, her father, her 2 sisters, her best friend from college, and about 10 more people from her inner circle. People she respected, who had influence in her life. The group name? The Truth About Fernanda. At 2:30 p.m., when she came home all smiley talking about the wonderful run, I was in the living room waiting for her with a folder in my hand. "Fernanda, we need to talk." She must have noticed something in my tone of voice, because her smile disappeared immediately. "Sit here next to me." She sat, kind of wary. I opened the folder and showed the first photo, her and Diego entering the Villa Madalena Hotel. Guys, the look on her face, it was like she'd seen a ghost. All the color drained from her face. "Carlos, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything. I know everything." Then I showed the other photos, one by one. Her and Diego at the restaurant. Her and Diego kissing. Her and Diego leaving different hotels. Fernanda started crying, tried to touch me, said she could explain everything, that it wasn't what I was thinking. "Fernanda, I have your conversations too." And then I showed the screenshots, the romantic messages, their plans to live together, and especially the messages where she called me naive, where she said she could string me along for a few more months. When she saw these messages, she stopped trying to explain herself. She knew there was no way to deny it. "Carlos, forgive me. It was a mistake. I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing." "Fernanda, you were planning to leave me. You were planning to keep half of our assets. You weren't confused. You were being calculating." That's when I told her about the WhatsApp group. "I created a group with your family and friends. I sent all these photos and conversations to them. Everyone already knows everything." Guys, she went into total despair. Started screaming, crying, begging me to undo the group to say it was a lie. But I wasn't finished. "I also sent everything to your company's HR, with a copy to Diego." Fernanda was in shock. She knew that relationships between employees were prohibited at the company. She knew both of them would be fired. "And there's one more thing, Fernanda. I already talked to my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. And with all this evidence of adultery, you won't receive anything. No alimony, no half of the apartment, nothing." She kept looking at me like I was a stranger, like she couldn't believe that naive Carlos was capable of doing all that. "You have until tomorrow to leave the house. You can take your clothes and personal objects. The rest stays." Fernanda tried to argue, tried to negotiate, tried to convince me to give her a second chance, but I was unwavering. The next day, she packed her bags and left. She never came back. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. She didn't contest anything. There was no way, with all the evidence I had. Diego was fired the same day she was. I heard later that he went back to his hometown in the interior. Their relationship didn't last even a month after everything came to light. Fernanda tried to contact me a few times, sent messages asking for forgiveness, saying she had learned her lesson, but I blocked her on everything. Today, almost 2 years later, my life is completely different. I'm dating an incredible woman I met at work, someone who values me, respects me, truly loves me. And Fernanda? I heard she's working at a small company, earning much less than she used to. Lives in a small apartment, alone, lost most of her friends after everything came to light. She chose to betray me. I chose to get revenge, and I don't regret anything. That's my story, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and especially, I hope you never have to go through something like this. But if you do, well, now you know how to get revenge.